says, I work with the Tarrant County, what do you call it? Where they do the autopsies.
Medical examiner or something?
Medical examiner. He says, I work with them and I've got this series of pictures and I'm looking to sell them, sort of thing, you know. So Ron and another guy and myself went up to Fort Worth, met this guy, and he's showing us all these pictures. I says, how much you wanting for them? I think he wanted like $40,000.
Oh no.
I said, these are never been issued before. Nobody else has got any of them, right? These are all fresh, sort of thing, you know, one of a kind. Well, no, the media's got them, and somebody else has got them, and I think the feds had them. I says, you want $40,000 for stuff that's already out, you know, floating around? And so anyway, we sat there looking, and he had shots of the room, which was the serving area of the cafeteria, right outside the vault. And it's got all of these cans all over the place. I mean, it was like you had them all stacked up and they all fell down in a big heap. But they're all shiny. We go, where's this picture taken? It got all these shiny, you know. I said, if they went through the fire, you'd think they'd be burned or they'd be blackened with soot or whatever, you know. Here they're all shiny, you know.
Well, they were, but we decided to clean them up.
Then
For the photograph.
one day he's showing us all the bodies that they had at the morgue, you know. And he had them in series, like 6 pictures on each page, or maybe 8. Anyway, he had this table with a bowl in it, with all this black stuff in the bowl, and then he's got all these, you know, charred bodies around it in these other pictures. He says, "What's that on the table?" He says, "That was our lunch." He says, "We ordered teriyaki chicken, and we thought that would be funny to put it in with all the pictures of the bodies, you know. You know, you get in the way, you want to slap somebody." So we didn't buy his picture. I says, "Tell me something. You worked for the medical examiner's office, right? So you're the official photographer. You went out to the site. You took pictures out there, and you took all the pictures at the morgue as they're doing this stuff." He says, "Yes." I says, "So you got paid for doing it? That was your job. So you got paid for taking these pictures, right?" "Well, yes." I says, "And they probably bought the negatives and paid for the processing and all that." "Well, yes, but I didn't get paid enough. I did a lot of overtime that I didn't get." You know, I thought, what a mercenary.
Well, it's also illegal. It would be county property.
Sure. I says, I'm not interested. I'm ticked off to begin with, and I'm not interested in giving you $40,000 for something that's not yours. Belongs to the county. So,
Should have filed criminal charges.
but he did tell us that while they were operating on them all, they were just having a lark. That was you know, joking and carrying on all the time. He said, that's normal. When they were cutting up people's bodies and trying to figure out stuff. So I thought, well, you're not winning me.
Not a job. That's not a job that I'd want to do, but I think I'd have a little more tact.
Be bad enough if you were showing the FBI the pictures and all joking about it, but you're showing relatives and people that have, you know, it's just happened to you.
That's
So
inconceivable.
well, like I said, the thing is, after it was all over, you know, I tell people, I said, I don't hate individual agents, you know, officers of police or sheriff's department or even the ATF or the FBI. We're not taught to hate. David used to always say, you know, people are people, no matter who they are or what they are, and the souls to be saved, possibility of being saved. So I said, I don't hate them, but I said, you know, it's what happened and the attitudes that they've continued to have doesn't help you to love them. You know, you certainly don't trust them.
Has any agents ever came back and said, I'm sorry? Or the sheriff?
Sheriff did.
What did he say?
When McNulty made his first documentary, he showed it at a place, at a, I think it was a hotel downtown, and he invited Sheriff Jack Howell to the viewing, and I went. And he hugged me, and he was almost in tears, you know. And so then one day he called me. He says, "Can we get together?" He said, "I'm real upset about, you know, the death of the children bothered me a whole lot." He said, "I never got over it." He said, "I'd like to tell you a few things." Since the day that they came out, it was negotiated that they wanted David to come out and talk to them up at the front of the property. And it was agreed that the whole thing would be done, no weapons, you know, kind of on neutral ground where there'd be no threat of anyone being shot or hurt. And David bowed out, but he asked Wayne Martin and Steve Schneider to go up and talk to him. And so they walk up to the front of the property near the gate, and this Bradley comes in, armored vehicle. And the back end opens up, and all these guys jump out with their guns trained up, Steve and Wayne. And so anyway, it's like drizzling rain, and they talk for a while, and eventually Steve and Wayne come back and tell us how scared they were, that they were either going to be shot or grabbed or whatever. But Jack Howell told me on the phone, he says, you know, that day we came out, he says, the plan was that we were to lure them over to the back of the Bradley and grab them, put them in there. First of all, they wanted to get David, but they were going to do it to Wayne and
They would probably
Steve.
gunned him down right there and then throw
And
a gun
so,
next to him.
Jack Howell opposed them. Jack Howell opposed them. He says, that's not what the negotiators agreed upon. You know, that wasn't the plan. And so he jumped out of the back of the deal and walked over to where they were standing. Because when they saw the tank drive in and these guys jumping out, they kind of froze, you know. So they were a little distance from the Bradley. And he says, so the FBI guy walked over, so there was like 4 of them standing there talking. And he says, but when we got back in the tank, he says, boy, he, you know, chewed him up one side and down the other for messing up their plan to abduct Wayne and Steve. He says, well, that's not what you set up. You're going to go back on the deal. He says, I don't think that's right. So anyway, he says, can we get together over coffee or whatever? I really like to talk. He says, there's things I want to say that I can't tell my family, and I just like someone to talk to, sort of thing, that knows what I'm going through. And within a few days, he was dead. And I went to the viewing. I didn't go to the funeral. I went to the viewing, and I talked to his widow and his son, one of his sons, and he kind of confirmed. He says, my dad's been upset ever since this happened. He says, and he won't talk to us about it, but we know that he's troubled. And like I said, he was going to tell me something which I never got to hear. But
How did he die?
Well,
in a bathtub.
the official story and the
Yeah.
rumors are two different
Yeah.
Okay.
deals, you know. Some said there was blood all over the bathroom. Now, I don't think that's a heart attack, you know. So I don't know. I didn't do any autopsies. I wasn't there. I can't.
Our government's,
It's just,
that's what they do.
it's just,
But he had announced that he was gonna go public with some information.
What was the sheriff's name again?
Jack
Jack
Harwell.
Harwell.
I think
and the
he's
guy
about
that
80
the
years
guy that
old.
became
He was in office for a long time. Everybody liked him.
the
He was
guy
80
that,
when he died?
Even the criminals. No, he was just real old. I don't know
Okay.
how, exactly how
the
old
guy that took his place
No, that's been here
was the lieutenant
since I came
that
here.
took the 911 call, Larry Lynch. He wasn't quite so friendly. I went and talked to him after at one point too.
I don't know anything about that.
He would talk to me, but he had an attitude, you know. And then he got into trouble, misappropriation of funds or something. So the last election they had, the guy that gets elected as the sheriff that we got now, he was the bodyguard for Judge Walter Smith.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, they're, you know,
I didn't know he was Walter Smith's bodyguard.
Well, him and his brothers, they were
They're
the
all
two
tied.
federal marshals.
you know, it seems like, you know, I was doing some research on when Hinckley shot Reagan, and Hinckley was friends with the Bush family and hung out with the boys. I mean, this stuff is just
Keeps on going.
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Deep.
How about those Dallas Cowboys, though? What do you think?
I don't know, did they beat the Indians?
If you can accept the position of this, because if you look at it back up, this is.
It was a little different this year. It was good, though. It was really good. And
Right. So there's
more mellow.
There may be a few people that talk to me on the phone when they say, well, who's your guest speaking? I said, they're gonna have to put up with me.
This has sunk.
I said, I don't have any guest speakers and shit.
Failing.
And,
I don't know how serious the problem is.
I don't know whether they came anyway, I don't know.
Okay.
Um,
Did your professor
this
from
is to be
Loyola come?
maintained here,
Yeah, she was here.
Catherine Wissing.
might be sufficient.
She's here?
She was in the green chair.
Oh, okay.
It still used to be.
Is she one? She's the one that helped us all write our
And you
books.
could jack it up with just lumber. You could just
Oh,
take
yeah,
lumber.
didn't you get the business card
shit
too?
and then pull together, like maybe a dozen of them.
What's this?
Okay.
This is Clive's contact information.
Okay.
It's my card.
It's none of my business.
Well, I've written this and I'm looking for.
I don't even know what it says.
You want me to get you one?
Where I'm going.
I could use one.
It's none of my business.
Doing that kind of work. The refiner's fee.
Hey, can I get Clive one? Can I get Clive one?
Hey, he's got one.
Could I get one?
You wanna sign this? It might be worth some money one day. Hey, it is selling movie rights. Yeah.
So Clive, over the years, I've seen the news media and stuff try to set you up with questions, you know, that try to make you look bad, and you've always answered them just about as well as I could think of anybody to answer. But maybe I missed an interview. Did you ever just tell somebody, you know, did you you've always been so your demeanor's always been very
Well, you
calm,
know,
and I was just
Humble.
thinking, man, I could not do that.
No hate.
Paul called me up a couple of weeks back.
Easily at this point, with some
He,
lumber or some jacks or some cribbage.
He had a friend that
It's kind of hard to.
had got one of these magazine articles, you know.
In there.
Said,
There's 3 inches between.
she wants to ask you some questions, so we ended up for about an hour on the phone. She just throwing
So.
everything that could come into her mind at me, you know. And so we got off the phone, and then Paul called back another day, and he says, you know, all the answers you give are wasted. He says, it doesn't matter how clear or how good your answers are. If your mind's made up, you don't get to first base or anything, you know. I says, well, you can only try, you know. So this friend apparently ganged up on him with another friend of his, a guy, and got all over him the other day. So he called me, he says, I've got to go to a speaking engagement. If I pay for your plane fare, will you come out and kind of be with me? I said, sure. So I'm supposed to fly out to California on Tuesday.
So is everybody going out to the Mount Carmel Center now?
I don't think so. I'm ready to.
You ever go out?
You've been there a couple of times.
Yeah, brother and I were out there last month. Spent about 6 hours listening to Charlie.
I think after we go out to Mount Carmel. Like I said, I wasn't kidding when they did.
Well, we're gonna go up there
Well,